I went to prison for my wife. She hooked up with her male assistant C-400. When I graduated from college, I used excessive force in self-defense while protecting my girlfriend, resulting in 4 deaths. I served 3 years in prison. After my release, we started a business together, quickly becoming a rising star in the industry. But one day, she suddenly gave the project I had just secured to her male assistant, solely to promote him to general manager. I confronted her about it at a company meeting, but she publicly declared, "Sincere Miller, don't forget you're an ex-convict. If it weren't for me taking you in out of old affection, you might be starving right now. How dare you try to take the project from Julian?" It was a major meeting at the group headquarters. Shareholders and mid to senior level management were all present. Victoria Ashworth sat poised in the chairman's seat, tapped the table lightly and announced, "I'd like to announce that the old district renovation project in Cedar Creek will be handed over to my special assistant, Julian Garrison. He will temporarily hold the position of acting general manager. Upon completion of the project, Julian will officially become the general manager of Sucheng Construction Group." As soon as she made the appointment, all eyes turned to me. Everyone knew she was my wife, and because of my prison record, to protect the group's image, I only held the title of business manager. But they also knew the reason for my imprisonment. Victoria had nearly been assaulted, and I had risked my life to protect her, killing 4 attackers on the spot. I was convicted of excessive self-defense. Most importantly, I was the one who had just successfully negotiated the Cedar Creek Old District renovation project. Rumors had been circulating within the group that completing this project would allow me to finally overcome the stigma of my imprisonment. This was incredibly important to me. Yet, with a single casual sentence, she had given the project to someone else. At that moment, Julian Garrison had already walked up beside Victoria, ready to speak. Victoria suddenly stood up and intimately adjusted his collar and tie, like a gentle wife tending to her husband. But I was her husband. I knew of Julian. He had joined the executive office last year and was promoted to special assistant this year due to his outstanding abilities. What I didn't know was that they seemed to have become involved. Otherwise, given my personality, how could I possibly tolerate this? Julian shot me a provocative glance. "Sincere, don't misunderstand. Victoria was my senior at university. Her being close to me is just her looking out for a junior. You're not jealous, are you?" The subtext was crystal clear. "Sincere Miller, I, Julian Garrison, just publicly cuckolded you, and you have to just take it." I took a deep breath, my gaze cold as I looked at Victoria. "Why is the project I secured being given to someone else?" Victoria glared at me with disgust. "Sincere, I am the chairman. I don't need to explain myself to you." Director Walter Lewis, a board member, rubbed his bald head. "Chairman Ashworth, as Sincere said, he secured the project, and he's capable of handling it. Suddenly giving it to someone else. The board also needs an explanation." Other shareholders nodded in agreement. "Sincere Miller, I was trying to spare you some embarrassment, but you clearly don't want it." "Don't blame me then," Victoria sneered, pointing at me. "Because you're an ex-convict, the old district renovation is a public welfare project. If the public finds out an ex-convict is in charge, they'll doubt the group, and subsequent work will be difficult to proceed with. Don't you understand that?" "Ex-convict? Victoria Ashworth, you know better than anyone how I ended up in prison," I retorted sharply. Victoria merely scoffed. "Sincere, you went to prison protecting me, and I married you out of gratitude. I've also been supporting you ever since. Otherwise, as an ex-convict, if I hadn't taken you in, you wouldn't even find a job. You would have starved to death by now." Every word she spoke stabbed at my heart, but I have never been one to be defeated by pain. All suffering only excites me to fight back. Just like when Victoria was almost assaulted. Facing more than a dozen men with no chance of winning, I still charged forward. At that moment I had only one thought: anyone who bullies my woman must die. I was stabbed 13 times that day, hit over the head with countless bottles, but I endured through sheer ferocity and killed 4 of them. The last one I chased down and killed as he fled. Otherwise, I wouldn't even have been convicted of excessive self-defense. Sincere Miller, as a man, you can't keep holding a past favor over someone's head, can you? Julian sneered. A mid-level manager from the sales department chimed in. Exactly, Mr. Miller. Our chairman has been good enough to you. She could have just given you money and sent you away, but she chose to marry you. I think not only should you not demand repayment, you should be showing gratitude. A woman from the PR department, flicking her nails, said, Seriously, our chairman is the bright pearl of Cedar Creek's business world. If you had any sense of shame, you'd resign voluntarily and divorce the chairman. A manager from marketing added, I think our chairman and assistant Garrison make a great pair, a perfect match. Someone from the design department piped up, Don't say that, why still call him assistant? It should be GM Garrison now. General manager is practically a done deal. Listening to them, I couldn't help but laugh. Victoria, do you want me to resign? I sat back down, my tone calm. Victoria looked at me deeply. Yes, your status as an ex-convict isn't good for the group, so you should resign. As for divorce, I haven't thought about divorcing. I can resign, but on one condition, I said. Victoria paused, then asked, What condition? Divorce. I glanced at the company's legal counsel. Contact lawyer Guo. Have him draw up the divorce papers. Are you crazy, Sincere Miller? Victoria suddenly slammed the table, flustered and exasperated. I just said you weren't suitable for the group. I never thought about divorcing you. Do you have to make a scene in public? I shook my head. Judging by how practiced you were adjusting Julian's clothes just now, it clearly wasn't the first time. Your relationship is definitely not just ordinary superior and subordinate. Since you've already betrayed me, there's no need to continue this marriage. The PR woman immediately urged, Chairman, agree quickly, this is your best chance to get rid of him. Many people were chiming in, enthusiastic about the matter. I mentally noted down this group of people. I also wondered, since when did group employees dare to gossip publicly, or even intervene in the chairman's marital problems? I won't divorce. Victoria slammed the table again. Stop it, Sincere Miller. I just wanted you to resign. I still have feelings for you. I lit a cigarette, took a drag nonchalantly and said, Sorry, I no longer have feelings for you. I, Sincere Miller, have never picked up used goods in my life. Too dirty. A hush fell over the room. The words were incredibly harsh. Even the shareholders hadn't expected me to say something like that. Only Julian was pleased, unable to hide the smirk creeping onto his face. He seemed to think his chance had come. Victoria stared at me in disbelief. Sincere Miller, what on earth are you saying? I'm your wife and you're calling me used goods? I nodded very seriously. I don't care if you and Julian have gone all the way or not. But as my woman, the affection you show another man has already crossed the line of a normal relationship. So, in my eyes, you're no different from used goods. Have you no shame, Sincere Miller? Making yourself sound so high and mighty. Don't forget, it's Victoria who's been supporting you. Without Victoria, you would have starved long ago. The way you talk now, it's as if you're the one supporting Victoria. Julian mocked. Exactly how dare he, an ex-convict living off a woman? He's just been spoiled by the chairman, treated too well. Thinks he's somebody. An ex-convict daring to disrespect the chairman at a group meeting. What kind of person is he? The same group of people who spoke earlier piped up again. I ignored them completely, looking instead at Victoria. There's nothing more to say. We must divorce. You can't do this to me. Victoria actually started crying. But what did I care? I paid her no mind and stood up to leave. However, Director Lewis stood up and walked with me, saying, The main investor for this project will be at the banquet later. You secured the project. Even if you're not heading it, you shouldn't miss this banquet. Julian quickly whispered to Victoria, Victoria, I think we should keep an eye on him. If he goes around spreading rumors, it won't be good for the group. Victoria wiped her tears, shot me a hateful look, and commanded, "You're not leaving. You are still a group employee, at least for now. I order you to attend the upcoming banquet." I stopped, turned back to look at them, and chuckled lightly. "You asked for it. Don't regret it." With that, I walked out of the meeting room. But Julian chased after me, blocking my path. After Director Lewis had walked away, he grinned provocatively at me. "Sincere Miller, there's something you probably don't know, right? The main investor for this project doesn't just recognize you. I met with the investor yesterday and they greatly admire me. That's why I had you stay for the banquet. I want to see you publicly humiliated. So, Sincere Miller, do you dare to stay?" Julian gloated, reveling in his perceived victory. I looked at him like he was an idiot. "Do you even know what kind of capital you're dealing with? Do you really think playing the capital game is easy? You're too young." With that, I left him standing there. Outside the group building, I lit a cigarette at the entrance. The security guard at the main door, Marcus Stone, came over and squatted down with me on the steps, sharing a smoke. I glanced at him. "Quit being a guard. There might be trouble soon. Bring some guys and stick with me." "Sure thing," he said, rubbing his bald head with a grin. I didn't dwell on melancholy. Frankly, I couldn't be bothered. As I said, pain can't break me. It only makes me more excited, more eager to strike back. The emotional problems between Victoria and me were her fault. She betrayed me. There was no need for me to punish myself. Not long after, I arrived at the banquet hall. Most of the group's employees arrived soon after. When they saw me, they made no effort to be discreet, discussing me openly right in front of me. He actually has the nerve to show up? Some people are just like that, no self-awareness. If it were me, I would have made way for GM Garrison long ago. He's such a lowlife, using such nasty words against the chairman. People like him deserve the worst. Their discussions were loud, drawing glances from many others. I just leaned against the window, smoking quietly, truly unwilling to waste breath on people with such limited understanding. Of course, I wasn't magnanimous enough to let insults slide without retaliation. I just disdained getting my own hands dirty. At this point, Victoria and Julian arrived and walked over to me. Victoria wore white, projecting an air of cool detachment, but her eyes were slightly red. She had clearly been crying again. She was the betrayer. What right did she have to cry? Victoria looked around, saw a few people nearby, and took my hand. "Sincere, please stop making trouble. I really didn't want to divorce you. It's just that everyone was saying you weren't suitable to stay at the group, so I made that decision." Seeing I remained unmoved, she continued, "As for Julian, there's nothing between us. Adjusting his clothes just now was only to boost his standing publicly, to make his future work easier." I waved my hand, shaking hers off. "Don't touch me, dirty." "Please don't be like this," Victoria cried again. I chuckled lightly. "Victoria, you boosted his standing by publicly humiliating me, by adjusting his clothes in front of everyone? Regardless of whether there's anything between you, everyone else will assume there is. Didn't you hear the gossip just now? What, Victoria? Am I not human? Can you just trample on me as you please? Or did you simply never care about my feelings?" Victoria shook her head vehemently. "No, Sincere, you're the only one in my heart, truly." "What's tainted is tainted. I won't believe anything you say," I sneered. Julian snapped, "Sincere Miller, don't push your luck. Victoria is already giving you a way out. How dare you continue to hurt her?" I glanced at him dismissively. "Julian, you have no standing to speak here." "I really don't know what you're so arrogant about," Julian yelled. "So you secured one project? It was Victoria who gave you the task, gave you the opportunity. If she had asked me, I definitely could have secured it too." Victoria at this point was lost in her tears, seemingly oblivious to our exchange. Julian continued, "I know what you're banking on. You think you have a good relationship with the investor, so the project can't proceed without you, right? Let me tell you, I've met the investor, and they admire me greatly when they arrive later. You'll see with your own eyes just how dispensable you are." And just then, someone approached. A woman in a black evening gown, noble and elegant. with an extraordinary aura, walked over. She was the investor, the princess of the internationally headquartered Jung Group, Vivian Chapman. "Miss Chapman is here." Julian immediately ignored me, scurrying over obsequiously, extending his hand. "Ms. Chapman, you've arrived. I should have gone to greet you." Vivian didn't shake his hand, instead asking with a faint smile, "Doesn't your group respect me? Sending a junior assistant to greet me?" Julian froze, his face instantly falling. At this moment, Victoria quickly dried her tears, composed herself, and said to me, "Sincere, I'll definitely give you an explanation when we get home." Then she wiped her face again, put on a smile, and walked over. "Miss Chapman, you are our honored guest. If anyone were to greet you, it should be me personally. It's just that your schedule was uncertain, which is why I didn't come to meet you." She extended her hand to shake Vivian's. Vivian still didn't extend hers, her face stern, looking displeased. Julian immediately looked at me. "Sincere Miller, didn't you see Miss Chapman arrive? Get over here." I smiled faintly, lit another cigarette, and leaned against the window looking outside. Director Lewis and the other board members, however, came over and engaged Vivian with appropriate respect. Vivian smiled back, responding to each of them. Director Lewis smiled. "Miss Chapman, your father and I met several times over a decade ago. I believe I even saw you once, when you were just a little girl." "Mr. Lewis, I remember you," Vivian smiled. "You gave me a gift when we met, a jade pendant. I still have it. I cherish it." As they chatted, Victoria and Julian were left awkwardly to the side, but Victoria, as chairman, had to stay nearby. Julian, however, merely a special assistant, had no standing to linger there and drifted back towards me. He muttered, "What's Miss Chapman got to talk about with a bunch of old guys?" I glanced at him. "Those without shares in the group are just peripheral figures. She won't pay them much mind." "Oh, you know everything now?" Julian scoffed. "As if you have any shares." I didn't say anything, just smiled. Julian added, "Let me tell you, Sincere Miller, getting rid of you is just the first step. Once I have real power, I'll clear out these old fossils too." He really didn't have much of a brain. Getting rid of board shareholders? Just like that? Even if he had the capability, a normal person wouldn't voice such thoughts aloud. I genuinely wondered how Victoria got involved with someone so clueless. Just then, I saw Vivian hurrying over. Her face was full of excitement as she grabbed my hand. "Sincere, I heard you're divorcing Victoria Ashworth?" "Yeah," I nodded. Julian looked incredulous. "Miss Chapman, surely you haven't been fooled by this Sincere Miller? Why are you calling him sincere like that?" Vivian ignored him, her eyes shining as she looked into mine. Julian persisted. "Miss Chapman, you probably don't know, right? This Sincere Miller is an ex-convict. He's killed people, 4 people, and he held his past favor over Victoria's head, forced her to marry him, and then lived off her like a kept man." Vivian still ignored him, asking me instead, "Since you'll be single, can I pursue you?" This statement shocked not only Julian, but everyone who overheard it. Only I wasn't surprised. Julian couldn't help but protest. "Miss Chapman, didn't you hear what I just said? He's an ex-convict, Noisy." Vivian frowned prettily. "Silence him, slap him." Then Vivian's bodyguards surged forward. They gave Julian no chance to explain. Some grabbed his arms and legs, while another delivered sharp slaps across his face. I saw Julian's teeth fly out, blood spurting. In moments, his face was swollen like a pig's head. Victoria rushed over. "Miss Chapman, he's my special assistant. This isn't appropriate." "Then call the police," Vivian retorted coolly, then turned her gaze back to me. "Sincere, since you're getting divorced anyway, just say yes to me. Trust me, nobody loves you more than I do." Victoria erupted in anger. "I'm not dead yet, and I don't agree to the divorce." Vivian ignored her, asking me, "Sincere, do you actually want this divorce or not?" I nodded firmly. "I am definitely getting divorced. I have no habit of picking up used goods." Sincere Miller Victoria broke down, but I simply didn't want to deal with her. Victoria declared, I won't divorce. Vivian looked at her coolly. If you don't divorce, I don't sign the contract. Without the capital injection, let's see how your project proceeds. Victoria was dumbfounded. At that moment, Julian, his face a swollen mess, pulled Victoria aside. He whispered urgently, Victoria, the project must go on as long as you're chairman. You can make Sincere Miller listen to you. Otherwise, you lose control over him completely. Victoria hesitated briefly, then walked back over. Fine, I agree to the divorce. I nodded, satisfied, and said gratefully to Vivian, getting this divorce smoothly. I owe you one. Vivian immediately linked her arm through mine, intimately. So, Sincere, how will you repay this favor? By giving yourself to me? I remained silent, not because I was resistant to a new relationship, but because I needed to resolve all the issues left over from the previous one before starting anew. As for my relationship with Vivian, we had actually known each other for a long time. Some years ago, Vivian was managing her family's import-export business when a shipment ran into problems that couldn't be resolved quickly. She heard I had relevant connections and came to me for cooperation. Through a few calls to some good friends I made in prison, the issue was resolved. We kept in touch after that, but strictly for business. When I noticed she seemed interested in me romantically, I proactively distanced myself, being a married man. Back in the banquet hall, Julian, despite his swollen face, was still trying to act important. He raised his glass. Today is a great day. Once our group completes the old district renovation, we will surely reach new heights. Let's toast to Victoria. A group raised their glasses, but Victoria stood by the window, looking lost and melancholic. Someone flattered Julian, GM Garrison, you're the capable one. Although that Sincere Miller seems to be latching onto Miss Chapman now, your future achievements will surely surpass even hers, Julian nodded smugly. I just needed an opportunity. Once I have it, I will reach the very top. He then walked over to Victoria, intending to put his arm around her shoulder. Victoria immediately dodged him, her face cold. I acted intimately with you only to boost your public image. Did you actually take it seriously? Victoria, you should know my feelings, Julian said urgently. And I really want to know, where exactly am I inferior to Sincere Miller? Victoria gave him a cold look. Get the project done properly. If anything goes wrong, you're out immediately. Shortly after I got home, Victoria arrived. Upon seeing me, she knelt directly in front of me. I was taken aback. Victoria, we've already agreed to divorce. There's no need for this. Victoria shook her head. No, Sincere, there has never been anyone else in my heart. I spoke to you like that only because I wanted to quickly train Julian up, so we could finally have time for ourselves. I looked at her coldly. I killed those men to protect you. My intention was good, but I still went to prison because the outcome was terrible. It's the same today. You used the wrong method, created the wrong result, and now you must bear the consequences. Can't you just give me a chance? Victoria pleaded through tears. I shook my head. We started dating after our college entrance exams. From that moment, I told you my bottom line was that you couldn't get too close to other men. Have you forgotten? Seeing my resolve, Victoria gritted her teeth. Fine, Sincere Miller, don't you regret this? Then she left. I didn't try to stop her. I knew she was just outside the door, waiting for me to call her back, but it was meaningless now. The hurt she caused couldn't be smoothed over by apologies. It's like pulling a nail out of wood. The board doesn't just return to its original state. A hole remains. The next day, my phone rang while I was still asleep. It was Director Lewis. Sincere, you need to come to the group offices. Something's happened, Director Lewis said. I knew trouble was coming. It was all within my expectations. Understood. Give me some time. A little over an hour later, I arrived at the group headquarters. The place was bustling. Besides the group employees, there were many outsiders. Many of them, though dressed in suits, had a rough, intimidating air about them. Vivian and her people were also present. I nodded to them and went straight into the main conference room, and they followed. Victoria sat in the chairman's seat with Julian beside her. Seeing me, Julian immediately roared, "Sincere Miller, what is the meaning of this? Just because you left the company, you decide to sabotage its projects." Director Lewis stood up and pulled out a chair for me, which I took. I glanced at Julian. "Elaborate. How exactly did I sabotage the company's project? Residents who had already agreed to demolition compensation are now all backing out. Isn't this your doing?" Julian demanded. Victoria also looked at me. "Sincere, we built this company together. You can't destroy it just because you're angry." I said nothing, instead looking towards a man with a full beard. His name was Nate Foster, a leader in the old district community and also one of my brothers from prison. He looked out for me when I first entered prison. After I got out, I helped him and the people in the old district start businesses. Nate glanced at Julian, then turned to Victoria. "Sister-in-law. Oh wait, ex-sister-in-law. I honestly don't know what's going on in that head of yours. Did you really think just anyone could negotiate the old district renovation project?" Victoria looked momentarily stunned, bewildered. For so many years I had handled everything perfectly, leaving her without a worry in the world. "You're just someone who enjoys success without effort." "Of course you wouldn't know anything," I said lightly. Julian slammed the table. "Cut the crap. Whatever term Sincere Miller offered, I can offer too." "You can offer?" Nate laughed, staring at Julian as if he were an idiot. "Cedar Creek's economy has been booming for 30 years, right? Why hasn't the old district been renovated?" "Because its location is prime, making demolition costs enormous. Plus, many people want to strike it rich from the compensation, demanding astronomical prices. Take me, for example. The compensation you offered was $3,000 per square meter. I demanded $30,000. Do you know how many properties I own?" "How many?" Julian asked. Nate sneered. 1,400 properties. Julian was utterly dumbfounded. "Demanding $30,000 is completely unreasonable. Then don't demolish. Did I force you?" Nate scoffed. Julian was speechless. Nate continued. "Other developers proposed collaborations, but I didn't trust them. Capital players have dirty hearts. But when Sincere proposed cooperation, I agreed, because we have a life and death bond, and he helped people in our old district start businesses." Nate looked around the room. "Let me put it this way. This project is happening because Sincere Miller negotiated it. With anyone else, I wouldn't do it." Vivian nodded in agreement. "The Jung Group invested primarily because of Sincere. Otherwise, we wouldn't easily touch a project with such a long return cycle and massive investment." Julian completely panicked, turning to Victoria. "Victoria, you're the chairman. Rescind Sincere's resignation and order him to help me complete this project. Hurry." Victoria remained silent, seemingly just remembering something crucial. I spoke calmly. "All right, Julian, stop scurrying around like an insignificant clown. Regarding the group's shares, I own 65. Victoria owns none. The only reason she sat in that chair was because I loved her, not because she had the ability." Julian was completely stunned. I laughed out loud. "What's wrong, Julian? Didn't expect that, did you? The woman you were flattering, the one you hoped to climb the ladder through, is just a figurehead. Didn't see that coming, did you?" Julian said nothing. Victoria was shedding tears, also silent. She had been in that position for so long she truly started to see herself as the creator of the group. But as I said, she had always been the one reaping where she hadn't sown. "Victoria, when I got out of prison, you were still doing manicures at a night market stall. Have you forgotten? To put it nicely, we started the business together. But during the startup process, what did you actually help me with? Wasn't it always me paying off your mother every time she came making trouble for your brother? The company's initial projects, I risked my life to secure them. Every shareholder present invested because they trusted me. Later, when your parents came demanding shares and you joined them, did you think I didn't want to give you any? It was your family's greedy behavior that made the shareholders uneasy about giving you shares. To make you happy, I gave up the title, letting you sit in the chairman's seat. But you didn't treat me like a human being. Regardless of whether you and Julian truly had an affair, we've reached the end. Your thinking has gone astray." After speaking, I waved my hand. Security, led by Marcus, came in and escorted them out. Victoria cried the entire time but said nothing more. Only then did she realize how profoundly mistaken she had been. But it was too late. Later, the project officially started. I was incredibly busy, but thankfully Vivian was exceptionally capable and helped tirelessly, allowing me some time to rest. During this period, our relationship progressed. After 3 months together, we were already discussing marriage. As for Julian, he hired someone to kill me, but Marcus Stone, the bald guard who always manned the main gate, took care of the assassin. Marcus was also a prison buddy. He owed me his life. Later, Julian received a seemingly good job offer abroad and subsequently died there. That job offer was arranged by me, behind the scenes, and those gossip mongers all lost their jobs, blacklisted from finding work in Cedar Creek. A few more months passed. Someone brought a child to my office. With the child was a letter. It was from Victoria. The content was brief. Sincere, I have always loved only you. I just lost my way, misled by Julian and his circle. They constantly whispered bad things about you in my ear, puffing me up higher and higher. Maybe I was also unwilling to forever be just the one who reaps without sowing, so I said those hurtful things. But I swear I never betrayed you, not ever. The child is ours. You can do a DNA test, I wouldn't lie. As for my innocence, I will prove it with my death. The letter ended there. Later, it was confirmed Victoria had died. She took pills and lay down in a freezer, just like that. The child was indeed mine, a girl who looked very much like her. Vivian adored the child, saying she would treat her as her own and would never hide the truth about Victoria. I have no regrets, because this is how the world should be. Bad actions lead to bad consequences. You reap what you sow.